these are good and for good. So even though I never know what's going to come out, it's always meant for our good. So, what is your number?
3.
And your color?
Blue.
And something you want to bring into your life.
Abundance.
Something you want to release.
Black.
Okay. And another caveat to these is that all of these things don't always come up. You know, they're just like triggers. So, we have 3. We have blue. You want to bring in abundance, and you want to release black. Okay. Just kind of go together, don't they?
Yeah.
Okay. Once, there was an old farm, a huge barn. There was a little girl that loved to play in the barn. What she loved the most was there's a huge stack of loose straw that was piled up so high it would have taken 5 of her to reach the top. But what she really, really liked to do was to climb up the ladder in the barn. And then she would go over, and she had to be very careful because she knew that if her dad caught her, he would come over and then he would say, "Jody, don't you dare jump off that loft." But that's exactly what this little girl did. Every time she could, she'd climb up that ladder and she'd go over right above where the pile of straw was, and she'd jump into the straw. Boom! She'd get up, shake herself off, dust the straw out of her hair, and do it again. Now, she was a very happy little girl, and she didn't really know that she didn't have much, because she really liked her life. She had a very good life. She had a mother and dad that loved her. She had a doggie named Toodles. She had the straw to play in. And she could see the blue sky almost every day. She'd go out there and she'd just get so happy looking up at that sky and enjoying it. But she had no idea her family didn't have very much. Now, she was real little when this was going on. She was before school. And she started going to school, and she got to be friends with 3 other little girls that lived around. And unfortunately, Jody started finding out that she didn't have very much. She started finding out that there were things in the world that these little girls thought were important. You know, like new dresses and shiny, shiny shoes. All of Jody's shoes were scuffed, you know, from jumping off the hayloft in the barn. That was the only pair of shoes that Jody had. She didn't know any better until these little girls started teasing her in school and making fun of her unpolished, scuffed shoes. And they were kind of mean to her. They kind of used her as a, you know, beating up stick, you know, that they could go over and pester all the time. And Jody didn't know any better. She thought that they were friends, because these were her first friends that she ever knew. She didn't know that friends aren't supposed to treat you like that. And so Jody started wanting to have pretty dresses and unscuffed shoes. And for the first time in Jody's young life, she started to be unhappy because she didn't have pretty dresses and she didn't have unscuffed shoes. And she started trying to figure out ways of getting them. And at first, she thought of very honorable ways of getting them. And she started looking for jobs that she could do to earn money. She'd go a long way to the first neighbor. I mean, the first neighbor lived a mile away from their farmhouse, and she would walk in her unscuffed shoes, or in her scuffed shoes, over to the nearest farmhouse and ask to do chores for Mrs. Hibley. And Mrs. Hibley was such a nice lady, she'd let Jody wash the dishes for her. She'd let Jody sweep her porch. And so Jody would do these things, and Mrs. Hibley would give Jody a few pennies. Mrs. Hibley didn't have much either. But after a while, Jody found that the pennies didn't pile up very quickly. So she started looking for other things she could do, and she started realizing that she could find things, places that she could take. So she started taking pennies, and she started finding other things that she could take. And pretty soon she got enough pennies and other things that she could go buy herself a pair of unscuffed shoes. But she knew she better not let Dad find out what she was doing. So she bought these new beautiful shoes that were patent leather, black. And they shone. They were so beautiful. They were the most beautiful shoes in the whole school. And she had to sneak to get them. She snuck over to the shoe place when Mom was in the grocery store one day. And she had to sneak them home. She had to find a hiding place to sneak them. And her heart became very sneaky. And she became very sneaky. So she learned how to do this throughout her whole life. And she learned how to have pretty dresses and unscuffed shoes. And she wanted more and more and more. As she grew up, she kept wanting more and more and more. And then, one day, Dad found what she'd been doing. He found one of her little stashes that she'd had. He'd heard that she was wearing all these unscuffed shoes and pretty patent leather and pretty dresses to school. And so he went searching, and he found her stashes. And she got in so much trouble you wouldn't even believe it. Now, he was a loving parent, and so he tried his best to teach Jody that this isn't the way you behave. But Jody was pretty stubborn. And so she just found better ways to sneak and get around Dad and Mom. But after a while, she became so unhappy, so very unhappy. And she didn't know why, because she had all the pretty clothes that she wanted hidden in other places. She learned how to get them better. She learned how to cheat more. She learned how to sneak more. But she felt horrible inside. And she went over to her favorite spot by the pond. And she sat there for a long, long time, grumpy and frowning down at herself in the water. And she said, "What's the matter with you? You have all this nice stuff. And here you are, frowning and grumpy, sitting here on your tush. What's going to happen to you?" Jody thought, I don't know. By this time, I don't know any other way to be. And she sat there pondering about that for a long, long time. And then all of a sudden, she felt like a light breeze blowing by her ear. And she heard, not really a voice, it was kind of echoey, thoughty, something. She heard something in her head that said, you know, there's another way to feel good and to feel like you have the whole world. And you don't have to go around being the way you've been. You can be good You don't have to do these things anymore. And Jody thought, well, how do I do that? And the voice told her, every time you feel like doing one of these bad things, come back and sit on this rock. And I'll come to you. And I'll tell you what to do. And I'll tell you how to act. Well, Jody was kind of desperate at this time because she was really, really miserable. So she started doing that. And she started thinking of this voice as a tiny, tiny fairy that she couldn't even see. And she started calling this fairy Glitter because she thought, she's so fast that I feel the breeze going by me. She must have gossamer wings that glitter. She was still into the, the glittery, shiny stuff. So she thought that this fairy must have glittery wings that just fluttered so fast they were like hummingbird wings and she wouldn't even be able to see them because she certainly couldn't see anything. But she started listening to what the fairy said. And she started doing the good deeds that the fairy said. And she started changing. And you know what? She started giving back the things that she had taken. She started giving away the things that she couldn't give back. And you know what? It gave her heart joy. And she thought, this is a new twist. I'm getting joy by giving things away. So she started doing it even more. And then she started finding things that she could give away and making things that she could give away. And her spirits were rising, and you know what? She hardly ever had to go back to the rock anymore to listen to the fairy. And she grew up like that, learning how to be good, and learning that her abundance came from her heart. And she didn't feel like she lacked anything if she gave love out of her heart. Okay.